on. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, no, that's fine. Before we proceed, I was looking at the list of witnesses in regard to the SABC 8.
Yes, Mr.
Well, I was looking at the whole list.
Yes, yes.
But I was more interested in terms of the SABC 8.
Yes.
Now, of course, I don't remember each and every member of the SABC 8
Yes.
from the media
Yes.
at the time of the incidents. But you have already called, I think, three members.
For now, yes.
Yes. There might be no need, obviously, to call each and every one of them.
Yes, sir.
If they are covering the same thing.
Yes.
But I don't remember seeing Mr. Vuyomvoko's name.
Yes.
Did I miss it? Is it there?
No, it is not there yet,
It's not
Chair.
there.
But we could, the investigators, they had updated us on,
Yes.
on the coordination of their
Yes.
evidence. But
Yes.
to the extent that Chair feels that you would like him specifically,
Yes.
that is something that they would be attending to.
Yes.
Yes.
No, I think it would be good because from what I think Ms. Thandeka Kubulembeki said,
Yes.
his case seems to have ended up being different from
Yes.
others in the sense that the others were reinstated
Yes.
after when they were all dismissed at the same time,
Yes.
as I understand the position, for
Yes.
the same reasons.
Yes.
They were reinstated, but he wasn't
Yes.
for certain reasons. And Ms. Kubulembeki was saying that, he suffered quite a lot
most,
for
yes.
2 years without a job.
Yes.
Now, that may be important. I'm interested in hearing how
that affected
because
him.
that's very different from the other 7.
That is true, Chair.
So
Yes.
so I would like that he be approached to see whether he could want to share with the commission.
Thank you.
His perspectives and how the dismissal affected him.
Thank you,
Yes,
Chair.
yes.
That will be done. Thank
Yes, and it would be interesting also to see whether, to the extent that there may have been any court orders that were granted in favor of the SABC against him,
Yes.
whether the SABC enforced those court orders and so on.
We'll
So
do that.
that kind of thing.
Thank you, Chair. We'll look
Yeah.
into that. Yes.
The other part which I thought of was also that we didn't deal with what version was put up by the SABC before the Labour Court in opposing the challenge by the SABC 8 of their dismissal. Or what version did they put up about the reasons for dismissals? And obviously the court judgment is there and one can read it, but it would be good even for the public if we could connect
That version.
by saying this is what the court ultimately find. If,
Yes.
for example, it rejected their version,
Yes.
or it's that's not a constitutionally acceptable, reason
Yes.
for dismissing people, it would be good to connect all of that.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
Chair. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, may then Exhibit CC24 be admitted as an exhibit, and that then, if the Chair is satisfied, that the witness be sworn in. I think I did it. I beg your pardon. We did, Chair, I beg your
Yeah,
pardon.
that's what I was thinking.
I've just been reminded that we did admit it, I beg your
Yes.
pardon, because it contains the statements of the previous witnesses.
Yes,
thank
but
you.
what I was thinking is whether we didn't decide that it would be the liver arch file that would be exhibit so and so, and in that file there would be so many
Numerous,
statements,
yes.
but they would not have their own
Exhibits.
separate exhibit numbers.
Yes. Chair, but what we did, I think some of those statements were identified and put in as individual exhibit numbers like yesterday.
Yes.
But I think it's simply the question of packaging, because these are in one liver arch file.
Yeah.
But if they are packaged separately in the presentation files, then they get admitted separately as those exhibits.
Yeah,
Yes.
we did discuss it. What I'm not sure is what we agreed upon. I think at some stage I may have said something like, okay, it's fine, but I
Yes.
can't remember. Because on the outside you have got exhibit CC20.
Yes.
So unless I did say exhibit CC20,
To 24. I think
you
that,
see,
that is how I
if one
presented it.
says exhibit CC20 to exhibit CC24, it's not the file.
The file itself,
It's the
yes.
individual statements inside.
That's correct, yes. Maybe it's safer, Chair, to just identify the statement and admit that statement as exhibit for consistency's sake.
Yes, I just want us not to get confused, or anybody later on who has to go through
Which
this
one was
getting
24?
confused.
Yes, yes.
What is clear is that on the spine of the liver arch file, it's clear that, maybe it should say exhibits.
CC22.
Or maybe, or should we leave it as it is, and if we decide to change it, we'll do that later?
Yes, Chair.
Because
if
the others we have
we
gone
have
in a certain way.
included the file itself, yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have admitted it anyway.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, it's just that as you ask questions, if you talk about, if you refer to Exhibit 24, that anyone who has been following or reads the transcript might think if they go to look at the file, liver arch files,
It would
they'll
only
find-
have 24 and we do not have
whereas
20.
it's inside.
No, true, Chair.
Yes,
Yes, thank you.
But maybe let's proceed, and we must just think about how to make sure there's no confusion.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
okay.
Chair. May the witness then be sworn in?
Please administer the oath or affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
Fhatuwani, Lastborn, Mutuvhi.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No, I don't.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes.
Do you swear that the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Okay.
Thank you. You may
Thank
proceed.
you, Chair. Thank you. Dr. Mutuvhi, there is a document in front of you which has been opened, and it is under divider number 24. And it is marked at page 1 of that document. Is it in front of you? It is marked statement. Could you please go to page 23 of that document? 23. Oh, your mic is off, I beg your pardon. Sorry. You'll have to start afresh, sorry. Thank you.
Page 23.
Yes, page 1. Let's start with page 1 because that was not recorded. There is a document that is marked statement on page 1, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And at page 23 of that document, there is a signature, and is that your signature, and are those your names?
That is my signature.
Yes, and you signed that statement on the 30th of August 2019?
Yes, I did.
Yes, and are the contents of this statement true and correct?
Yes.
And did you depose to it freely and voluntarily?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Could you please tell the chairperson, where are you currently employed?
I'm currently employed at the Department of Communications.
Yes, please face the chair. Yes, thank you. The department as what? What is the position that you hold within the department?
I hold the position of the Chief Director responsible for the digital migration program.
Yes. Could you just place your qualifications briefly on record?
I hold a master's degree of commerce in project management, master's degree in public administration. A master's degree in business administration, and a doctorate degree in public administration.
Yes. Thank you. And how long have you been with the department?
I think this one strike a compromise.
A compromise. Not mentioning metric.
Between starting at the bottom and going up, and
Yes.
or starting up going down.
Yes,
Okay.
Chair. Thank you. And how many years have you been with the department?
I joined the department in October 2014.
2014?
Yes.
Okay. And before that, have you had any experience at all in project management?
Yes, my whole life I've been in the project management environment.
Yes. And where did you operate within the project management space within any of the SOEs of government, or outside, or in the private sector?
Yes, I worked for Telkom at middle management and senior management level, responsible for strategic projects in the company.
Yes. In paragraph 4, you deal with your appointment as a project manager. What were you appointed to manage at that point?
I was appointed to manage the digital migration project, the
Yes.
project I'm still responsible for at the moment.
Yes. Could you just explain to the chairperson what this project was about?
The main objective of the project is to release the spectrum through migration of television owning households that are currently viewing on analog platform. That is the main objective of the project.
Okay. In simple terms, what does that mean?
That the current broadcast on analog platform, it's more costly in terms of the bandwidth. It utilizes more bandwidth. So migrating from analog to digital platform will enable the broadcasters to have an opportunity to launch more channels. For an example, where SABC1 is currently broadcasting, post-migration, when the spectrum is released, SABC1 channel can have opportunity to broadcast between 8 and 14 channels.
Yes. So, and then how does that benefit the public or the various households?
The households benefits, as demonstrated in what has happened so far, Chair, is that in a digital platform, we currently even have more channels. We have SABC 1, 2, 3, SABC News, SABC Sport, and Parliamentary Channel on the digital platform. Whereas on the analog platform, those channels are not there. It is because of the indication I've made earlier that in a digital platform, the bandwidth is low and it accommodates more channels to be broadcasted on.
Yes.
So communities and public will have more channels on digital platform that will also enable again, Chair, is the quality that we have on the digital platform than the one that we have on the digital platform. If you take the analog television set now and compare with the one that we are viewing on the digital platform, the digital platform looks like the one that I'm facing now. But on the analog platform, it has those invisible. Some other times you will have a demonstration of somebody coming with an area, a bunny area, you can stand there. So those are some of the benefits that communities who have already migrated are benefiting at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, I think you assume that some of us are not familiar with what you are talking about. I do know that when one of the cases came before court, one read quite a lot on the papers about this whole project, but that was some time back. But it seems that the project had to do with analog and digital. Okay, I think you must take us from the beginning to say analog refers to this, digital refers to this. The disadvantages about analog are the following. The advantages of digital are the following. And I'm saying that because I know that down the line we will be needing to look at that, but it will just be helpful to me. You might not need to go into great detail at this stage, but it would be helpful if you are able to just give me those fissures so that as we go along, one keeps that in mind.
Thank you, Chair. Just in short and at high level, the analog, both analog and digital broadcast utilizes the transmitters, which are known as aerials.
Aerials.
Yes. The not necessarily areas, transmitters, I wanted to say.
Or transmitters, yeah.
The transmitters, the towers, they are well known as towers. However, the analog platform, as I've indicated earlier, consumes more bandwidth because of the technology it utilizes. The very same transmitters are configured with a technology that is digital, that is converted to a television broadcast through a decoder. Although the technology has advanced to make use of the integrated a decoder that is built inside a television set. So the disadvantage of analog broadcast is the making use of more bandwidth. But on digital, the advantage of digital platform, it's low bandwidth that enables more channels to be broadcasted in the same chunk of spectrum.
In lay terms, what's bandwidth that analog consumes more of and digital less of?
I might not be able to give the quantity of bandwidth that analog and...
No, I'm just talking about what it is. It's something that does what? Or
the bandwidth refers to the airwaves that communicate to the
that are needed in order to broadcast. Okay.
Yes.
Analog, the analog platform, as you call it, consumes a lot of that.
Yes.
And the digital consumes less.
Yes.
Okay, and that affects the issue of costs.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So then, as you deal with what is it that you suppose you deal with your team, and you deal with how you are going to set up this project as a project manager. You could just roughly, at the time, and as you are appointed to project manage the program, just highlight to the chairperson what were the immediate challenges that you were facing, roughly as you deal with them. I see you've mentioned the officials that you worked with. They are contained in your statement, and your team as a whole, but basically then, what were the challenges that you had to contend with at that point?
Chair, at the time of my appointment in 2014, I was briefed that the project is behind schedule, given the imminent international telecommunications deadline, union deadline of 17 June 2015. And by that time, I was briefed that I needed to ensure proper coordination of role-playing entities to ensure that we try to meet the deadlines. And the entities are presented that are playing a role are on the document that was not submitted on the, but I have made it available this morning.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Might I just beg leave to just hand up this for
Yes.
illustration purposes?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So mainly was to ensure that the roles that the different entities are playing are well coordinated to ensure a smooth delivery of the project.
Sorry, you do have, Doctor?
Yes, I
Oh,
do.
you do, yes, thank you. Could you just take the chairperson through this diagram that you've given us? What is this document?
This is an ecosystem that we developed to guide the implementation process of the program, identifying individual roles and responsibilities for different entities. This includes the department, Independent Communication Authority, South African Bureau of Standards, Centec as a signal distributor, the role of department that we engaged on to harmonize frequency spectrum, potential interference, the procurement of the decoders I spoke about earlier, which was done by USASA, the role of department to ensure raising awareness and education to the public so that it can entice people to take up the digital decoders, the role of SAPO to distribute and register indigents who qualify for government subsidy to be migrated, and the broadcasters to provide content. As I've indicated earlier, in the digital platform, Chair, we have more channels than the ones that are on the analog platform, including other broadcasters, ETV, SABC, and community television. And to ensure that there is a process of switching off those analog transmitters that are currently operational. I will speak later, Chair, that we have demonstrated that in area where we have switched off, we have migrated all people, we have switched off those analog transmission services. And once we are done with the rollout of this program, all analog transmission services have been switched off. There's going to be a frequency risk-taking, and then the release of the digital dividend, which is the spectrum, much needed for the telecommunication services.
Thank you. And then you have just highlighted the role players in that whole process.
Yes.
And who was going to deal, you were the project manager, but you were not going to deal with procurement matters, am I correct?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Yes. Which entity was designed or was allocated that mandate to actually procure the implementation of the stakeholders for the implementation of that program?
Is the Universal Service and Agency of South Africa, USASA.
Yes. And you deal with that at page 6 of your statement, am I right? You've already spoken about the post office and its role.
Yes.
And is it also correct that when you say the post office was going to attend to warehousing, so what it means is that they were going to be responsible for the warehousing of these decoders?
The ideal situation, Chair, is that the decoders were going to be made available to SAPO for distribution immediately.
Yes.
And not to be warehoused, because obviously that would incur cost.
Yes.
Yes, so the critical role of SAPO was to ensure that the decoders ordered are taken to post office branches where indigents will be able to either collect or they will be distributed in those post offices.
Yes. The one thing that we have not mentioned, highlighted there, is the South African Bureau of Standards. That it's something that you also had to look into.
below a mountain or an escarpment, they cannot receive terrestrial network services from the tower. So those ones require a direct-to-home decoder. At that time, we had shortages of those decoders, and we could not efficiently continue. A typical example here is that if we connect a household along one street and the other one could not receive, it could cause a social challenge. And consequently, we had to now replan to look into areas or provinces which are flat terrain, where we can be able to distribute these terrestrial decoders. And we identified Free State as one. So the first phase on the replanning was to look at, in the short term, to deploy those decoders that are sitting so that we can free the cost at Sapa Warehouse while benefiting the communities. The second phase was to look into the procurement or the supply of the direct-to-home decoders so that we can connect those pockets of those areas where people have registered and we could not.
Yes.
And the third phase was to look at the procurement of the remainder of the households to benefit from the government subsidy.
Yes. So then the procurement is the aspect that we've already spoken about, that USASA was tasked with that.
Yes, Chair. USASA is responsible for the procurement, and I think they are best placed to deal with issues of procurement in this regard.
Yes, but in paragraph 56 at page 13, you deal with lack of transparency in that process, the procurement process, in paragraph 56 of your statement.
Yes, Chair. As the department responsible for the coordination of these programs, of this program, all entities should be reporting to the department in order for us to properly plan and ensure smooth coordination of and execution of the program. So in this regard, there were areas of lack of transparency with regard to the issues of procurement, which are very key to the program, because as the department, we should be able to know when are we expecting devices to be and what numbers, so that when we plan, we target specific areas, knowing that we'll have sufficient number of decoders and stock to deploy. Yes.
So, which is the question that in consultation I asked, whether if I were to ask you now as a department, how far is implementation? And it's a question that you are not able to answer because you said they were not reporting directly to the department. Is that correct?
Chair, with respect to the procurement, I won't be able to give details. I think USASA can provide much details, but the impact on the delivery of decoders is on the rollout of the program. Due to the lack of those decoders, we are unable to continue with the rollout of those decoders to the deserving indigents from the government point of view.
And that is what you demonstrate under paragraph 78, am I correct? The table that you put up there.
Yes, those are some of the challenges, but this table 78 deals with a number of challenges.
Yes.
Yes.
And then can you just highlight them for the chairperson?
The first challenge talked to the issues of funding. The project is not sufficiently funded. I should indicate that, and I've indicated on this statement, that by the time of the handover of this project, the department only had 1 million rand appropriated to deliver this project. And as the department, we're responsible for ensuring that there's awareness campaign and communication to inform the public and raise awareness, so that 1 million rand was a very limited budget. However, Chair, you will...
Was the 1 million rand just for the awareness campaign?
It was mainly to run the project of the project management office and awareness campaign and all other goods and services for the program.
Yes.
So I want to demonstrate that the project is not sufficiently funded to take care of all the aspects of the program. In this regard, I indicate the issues of the decoders, because the decoders procured, as per the information from the entity responsible, it's 1.5 million. And at the time we projected 5 million or estimated 5 million indigent households to be serviced by government. The issues of distribution is impacted. I speak about issues of public awareness and education campaign. There is a need for a call center so that people in every corner of the country, when they have problem with this decoder or want to understand something about the program, they're able to call. I have this technical challenge, I have this, I want to understand what this whole program is all about. There's dual illumination cost. Currently, Centec is running a dual network, which is the digital and analog, which is costly for the government. And I speak about content, which is what SABC is currently providing in terms of additional channels,
Yes.
like I've spoken about. The second issue, but however, maybe I should indicate that those are the impacts that the impact of the lack of funding relates to the delays in the rollout of the program.
Yes.
And therefore we cannot switch off analog transmission services.
Yes.
Leading to Centec continue running to network. The registration uptake due to the lack of awareness campaign it's low. Inadequate reach of messaging to the public, lack of availability of set-top boxes to the retail market.
Yes. Can I just take you, before you move on that, to page 21 of your statement, where you give the figures throughout the country. You highlight the summary of registrations and installation statistics.
Yes.
Could you just take the chair through that? Because it talks to the slow pace of rollout. Yes.
Yes, Chair. Since we started with the registration process in October 2015, we have so far, from the estimation of 5 million indigent households, registered only 1.06 million, as demonstrated on the table there.
Yes.
Out of the ones that we have registered, we have only connected 511,000. So half of the, and this is due to the lack of direct-to-home decoders, as I've indicated. However, the document or this statement talks about the current absence of installers who should be installing these decoders because of the expiry of the contract in January 20.
Yes. And then lastly, then, because of these matters that you had raised around procurement, there was an investigation, is that correct, by Pricewaterhouse?
Yes, Chair. In the paragraph,
I think it's paragraph 56 that we've already spoken to.
Yes, there was investigation of which I because of not being involved, there was an investigation which was requested by the office of the acting director general then.
Yes, and National Treasury was involved in that.
Yes, it was requested in the office of the National Treasury.
Yes. So these are matters that related to how procurement was sourced and who benefited, but those are matters that are beyond your knowledge. We'll deal with them next week.
Yes, Chair.
Yes,
those are matters that I think require USASA to outline.
Thank you. And then lastly, if you just, in your conclusion, you re-emphasize the point of a lack of resources as being a challenge.
Yes, Chair, the project of this magnitude requires resources, financial and human resources. And even now as we speak, we are not sufficiently funded to deliver the program. The awareness campaign I'm talking about, although this year we have a budget better than other years, but we need to raise awareness campaigns across the country so that we fast track this process of migration by enticing the community to take up the services. Human element as well. We are currently, if not mistaken, I think we are, because we have requested some officials from other divisions within the department, we might be having a team of about 11 people who are expected to deliver, to roll out this
Yes.
program across the country. So that is one of the challenges that we currently have. The second issue in conclusion, in the conclusion statement is that much as we are the responsible department for the rollout of this process, we do not have control over, or we cannot play an effective and efficient oversight to the entities that are playing a role in the process. And it will be ideal. It is ideal to have these entities reporting and accounting fully to the department, so that even the department is able to take decisions that assist the process of the program. I think those are some of
Matters
the
that you wish to
issues
highlight.
that I have
Yes.
raised in the conclusion of this debate. We require resources,
Yes.
and there is a need for full control of the department to the rollout process.
Yes, thank you. And then when you come back, then we are going to deal with the nitty-gritties that relate to the procurement processes, according to the report that you are going to be presenting when you come back to the commission.
Yes, as I've indicated on this discussion now,
Yes.
is that and reported, the procurement matters can be well placed and responded to by the responsible entity, because the department was not necessarily involved in the procurement process.
Yes, thank
Yes.
you. Yes, thank you, Chair. That is the evidence from the witness.
Yes, no, thank you. You complain that there is no sufficient funding for this project. Is there a commitment on the part of a sufficient commitment on the part of your department and the government to this project, given how long it's been on the table? My recollection from the affidavits that I read when the matter relating to this project came to the Constitutional Court is that it had started. Are you looking for a pen?
Yes.
Will somebody help me with a
Yes,
pen?
with a pen. Oh,
Yeah.
Yes, please, my pen somewhere. Oh, yeah, I got it, thanks.
Oh, you have got it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, thank you, Chair.
My recollection, which might not be accurate, my recollection is that this project started not later than 2008. I may be mistaken, maybe much earlier, I can't remember. But assuming that it started in 2008, that means it's been, what now, about 11 years. And as I understand the position, and I think there was something in the newspapers a few months ago, to the effect that I think set boxes had been stored in some warehouse. I don't know for how many years. And I think there was a suggestion in that article in the newspaper that a lot of money had been wasted because there was no action. My recollection of what the article said might be faulty. And one is bound to ask the question why something like this could take so long. And I know that even from the court papers that I'm talking about, one got information to the effect that you would have this Minister of Communications, and he or she would come and say, this is what we want to do about this project. And then when there is another minister, he or she would come and say something else, as if these were ministers from different governments. And partly that is why there was a court case to court, because there were fights about exactly what it is that should be followed. And maybe the reason why there might not be adequate funding now is because in the past a lot of funding was given, but it's been wasted. And of course, whatever was thought would be the cost of implementing this project 10 years ago would be much more now. And if it had been implemented timelessly, a lot of costs would have been saved. You might not be able to deal with all of these things, and maybe other people that will come will deal with them and answer them. But if you are able to enlighten me, I would welcome that.
Thank you, Chair. The question around the commitment of government to deliver this program, I will speak about, since I have joined the department, Chair, that being responsible for the coordination of the program, we identified different milestones. The first one was to service the market that is to be subsidized by government. And in that regard, we, through the data that was there dating back to 2012, we identified...
Am I correct about how long the project has been on the agenda, or am I mistaken in terms of around 2008?
You are correct, Chair, but the activities started way back around 2002, 2003, towards the finalization of the policy that was done in 2008. Yes.
So it makes it even worse.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway.
From the implementation point of view, Chair, is that
everything takes too long.
Ours is to implement policy. So the activities prior to 2007 could perhaps be pre-policy activities. But you are correct to say 11 years from 2008.
Yes, I'm just saying everything seems to take ages about this program, about this project. I mean, if they started to put together policy around 2002, I mean, it's close to 2 decades now. And from what you are saying and from what one sees in the media, we are very far from really the completion of the project. Yes, okay. You can enlighten me on what you are able to enlighten me on. I accept that maybe some things are things that you might not be able to deal with.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the commitment of government to realize the successful migration of television broadcasting in the country, I should indicate that from when we started in 2000, when I started in 2014 towards 2015, we identified key milestones. The first one was to ensure that we start identifying those households that qualify to be registered. And within a short space of time, although the date of 17 June had passed, but we started with the registration process in October. After which, in 3-month period, we started with the rollout of those decoders. Within a period of 10 months, we started switching off the analog transmission services in the SKA. So those are the milestones we're chasing, so that we can demonstrate the realization, the potential realization of the migration process. However, as demonstrated in the statement, there are those challenges that makes us unable to complete the issues of lack of resources and so forth. But where in areas where people have been migrated, although every project might have its own challenges, people are benefiting and are beginning to realize the benefit of what the program is bringing to them. Because if somebody visits a household that has analog service and the other one that is digital, they can see the difference. So I can say from where we are sitting and the support we have been receiving from our accounting officers and the executive authority, there is a will for government to realize the program rollout. The issue of where the decoders stored in the warehouse, it is correct, and is as a result of the challenge that I spoke about earlier, the absence of other type of decoders that can have impact on the rollout in a particular area. And the question why so long? If I were to respond to a question why so long, I can only speak to the time at which I started with the program. That the challenges that I have highlighted in the statement talks to the issues of lack of resources, and it makes it difficult. But to demonstrate our commitment, realizing all these challenges, we did not sit and fold our arms and say we don't have resources. We have, in the past week, we've formalized forging the partnership with the Department of Cooperative Governance so that we can make use of the community workers program, because they are based in the communities, to identify people or households that are in analog platform so that we can register them while waiting for issues of the installers that we do not have. We could not also complete the Free State. We targeted it to complete in March. We could not finish because there are no installers. But we are saying, while these are happening, we want to ensure that the registration process continues. By the time we have installers, by the time we have decoders, we will only be left with the process of rolling out or distributing and connecting decoders. So we have forged that partnership with COCTA. We are engaging, and we have engaged the different provincial governments, district and local government. Free State is a case. Northern Cape is a case. We are now this week in the Eastern Cape to try and engage with these institutions so that they can assist us in getting people registered while raising awareness. Because of the lack of resources, now we also piggyback on other activities. If a district municipality have events, we go exhibit and do that. But we are a very limited number in terms of resources, human resources. I think that is all I can say for now, Chair.
On your estimation as we speak now, how long do you think it would take for the program to be finalized?
Chair, the key ingredient of finalization is the availability of decoders, not only for government subsidy, but also the ones that are on the retail market. Although there are some free-to-air decoders in the market, but in most instances, the people will be asking about the ones that we are as government we are providing. Where do I get in the retail market? And they are not there. So that's the activities we are trying to engage with the retail to say we have this number of estimated number of people that could benefit from introducing this type of decoders. So in the question of how long, Chair, we are determined as department to ensure that we, on our part, we register all households. Due to resource constraints, maybe we might not make the end of the financial year, but that is what we are thinking, that if we can achieve registering those indigent households by the end of the financial year, we can therefore be able to focus on the rollout of decoders when they become available, and that will be easy. We have demonstrated in the Free State, Chair, when the installers were there between October and January 2018 and October 2018 and January 2019. That through focused approach, where we go to focus in an area, get the installers, load the decoders in the buckies, install, the following day they collect. We have covered those areas, and we managed to switch off one transmitter in the Free State. If it was not the issue of the installers, absence of installers, perhaps we could have switched off Free State and remain with the metro.
Okay.
But in terms of determination, how long, it is our wish that we complete this process within a shortest period of time. We are unable to say tomorrow because of the challenges that we have. But if resources are available, this is a process we can complete within a period of 2 years.
Yes, okay, no,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for Dr. Mutuvhi for coming to share your evidence with us. You will come back and deal with the balance of the matters that need to be dealt with in regard to the project. Thank you very much. You are excused.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
This file.
Witness. Chair, there is another witness for today.
Yes.
I'm not
You
sure
need
about
some
Chair.
time to...
Just to change places, my learned friend is going to deal with that witness.
Yes. Should we combine that with the tea break?
I would prefer that, Chair. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay. Yes, thank you.
Okay, let's combine that with the tea break. Let's resume. Let's go for the tea break and resume at 11:25. That will give you us time for the tea break plus
This
your
setting up. Thank you.
time to rearrange things.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn.
Thank you.
Chair, the next witness is Mr. Joseph Thloloe.
Yes.
May the witness please be sworn in.
Yes, please administer the oath or affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
Joseph Thloloe.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No, I don't have.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes, I do.
Do you swear that the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
You may proceed.
Chair, in front of you, you will find 4 arch lever files containing the statement and annexures of the witness's statement and annexures. These are labeled CC19 A to D.
Yes.
May we please admit those files into evidence?
What is under A? It's his statement and annexures.
It's annexures. B contains annexures as well. C contains annexures as well. And finally, D contains the annexures as well.
The
transcripts,
annexures
apologies,
is
Chair.
the report, isn't it?
Chair, the report is underneath file A. And then thereafter, there are transcripts until file D.
Oh, okay, all right.
We're going to be starting off with file A,
The
Chair.
liver arch file containing the statement of Mr. Joseph Thloloe and certain annexures will be marked Exhibit CC 19A, and the 3 other files that have got annexures to that statement will be respectively will be Exhibits CC 19B, CC 19C, and CC 19D.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Thloloe, the first page in front of you, page 1, can you identify that document?
Yes, it's a statement I made and signed.
And if you turn to page 7 of that same statement,
Yes, I see that.
is that your signature at the bottom?
It's my signature.
And it's dated the 12th of August, 2019.
That's correct.
And all the contents of the statement is true and correct?
Yes, it is correct.
Mr. Thloloe, if you just, on the first page, paragraph 3, it states that you were approached by the investigators of the commission, particularly to provide a statement detailing with the details of the SABC, particularly to a report identified as the Report of Commission of Inquiry into the Interference in the Decision-Making in the Newsroom of South African Broadcasting Corporation, dated the 25th of February 2019. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Chair, the report can be found on page 8 in the same Archlever file.
What page?
Page 8, Chair.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Thloloe, that is the report that
Yes,
you want to talk
it is the
to.
report that we compiled.
Thank you. Mr. Thloloe, If we turn to page 2 of your statement, on paragraphs 5, you've highlighted the mandate in which this report was compiled. Can you just highlight the terms of reference that you were given in compiling this report, starting?
Before that, could he just tell us more about himself? I think he has been around in the media for a long time.
Yes, Chair, apologies about that.
Yeah,
I
let him
apologize
tell
for
us
that.
about himself. He has been around for a very long time. And I see that the statement starts at paragraph 5 by talking about the terms of reference of a certain commission, but it hasn't, I think, told us which commission that is and how he related to it. I think he was the chairperson.
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
Apologies. Ms. Thloloe, can you just tell us where are you currently employed?
I am retired, if one does ever retire. I retired from the Press Council of South Africa, where I was executive director. But before then, I've been a journalist for the last 58 years, starting in 1961. And I have worked for most of the major publications in this country, the World, Rand Daily Mail, Drum Magazine, Post newspapers, Post Transvaal. The list is endless. I was also at one time editor-in-chief of the SABC's television news. And at another time, I was editor-in-chief of ETV News. As I say, I have had wide experience in the media in the last 58 years, 59 years.
Thank you, Mr. Thloloe. In terms of this report, how did you come about, in what capacity were you mandated in this report, and how did it come about that you became involved in this report?
I was invited by the acting group chief executive of the SABC at the time, Ms. Nomsa Philiso, and she asked me if I could chair this commission because of my wide experience in journalism and ethical issues. I agreed to do that, and I was then subsequently told that I would be joined by Mr. Fhatuwani, who is an attorney from MMM Attorneys.
And in paragraph 5 on page 2 of your statement, you've highlighted the mandate of this commission, the terms of reference in particular. Can you just highlight the, starting as from paragraph 5.1?
Maybe before that, I see that it's referred to as a commission of inquiry. Do you know whether it was established in terms of any legislation, or was that term just used because it was convenient? I know the legally commissions of inquiry are established in terms of the Constitution and the Commissions Act, but sometimes people speak just informally. So, but I don't know whether, I just want to know whether it was established in terms of some legislation or not.
No, it wasn't in terms of any legislation.
Yes.
I think the term was used quite loosely.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Thloloe, can you just please highlight the terms of reference of this inquiry?
We're to investigate the nature, the prevalence, and the merits and veracity of all the allegations and or grievances and/or complaints of editorial, political, business, and commercial interference in the newsroom of the SABC. We were to establish the factors and/or mechanisms that enable the editorial, political, business, and commercial interference and/or transgressions. We were to establish whether there was evidence to substantiate the allegations made. We were to evaluate the substance of all the allegations and/or grievances and/or complaints. We were to review any or all submissions made before by any person or persons in respect to the allegations and/or grievances and/or complaints lodged by the employees. We're to make factual findings and conclusions based on the evidence, the testimony that was presented. We were to do interviews, a review of submissions, and a review of applicable supporting documents. We were to interview all SABC employees and/or any other persons that are mentioned in the allegations and/or grievances and/or complaints lodged by the employees. We were to make recommendations on the appropriate corrective institutional or structural measures to be considered and to be instituted, and to address control deficiencies. We were to advise the SABC board on what steps need to be undertaken. We were to recommend appropriate corrective action, which could include disciplinary action where there is misconduct. And we were to prepare a written report setting out in detail the methodology adopted, the findings, the conclusions, and the recommendations. As I had said earlier, we were given these terms by the then acting group chief executive of the SABC.
Thank you, Mr. Thloloe. And can you shed light on the methodology that incorporated your mandate and also the evidence gathered? That would be also highlighted from paragraph 7 onwards.
First, we got written submissions after invitations were sent out to all staff members and to members of the public to make written submissions to the commission. And from the written submissions, we then had formal interviews with the people who had made written submissions. We also had face-to-face interviews via things like Skype, teleconferencing, where we couldn't reach the people directly. But most of them were in Johannesburg or came to Johannesburg to come and give evidence at the venue where we were gathering the evidence.
And Mr. Thloloe, in paragraph 11, you've also highlighted elsewhere in your affidavit that you had oral evidence, 58 sessions of oral evidence that was conducted. Is that correct?
It's correct. We had 58 trade unions, political parties, media freedom activists, as well as staff members coming to talk to us, and general members of the public coming to talk to us. But altogether, we had 58 submissions.
Mr. Thloloe, you state that you've had also included political parties. What was, the purpose? I know that invitations were sent out to the public, but what was the purpose to receive submissions from various political parties?
I would imagine that political parties are members of the South African public. They took up the invitation to come and, to send us written submissions as well as to come and make oral submissions.
And
So there was no specific reason why we selected political parties.
Okay. And the report was accompanied by, also in the archive files, by various transcripts, which was labeled evidence 1 to 12. It's stated here that the 8th transcript is outstanding due to Mr. Thloloe's laptop having been crashed, who co-authored the report with you. Is there an update on, if this report will be submitted, this transcript in particular will be submitted to the commission, or have you found this transcript?
As soon as he sends it to me, I will forward it to the commission.
Thank you. Of the interviews, they were largely confined to voluntary submissions, is that correct?
All of them were voluntary.
As you guys did not have any investigative capacity and could not subpoena witnesses, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
In paragraphs 14 onwards, Mr. Thloloe, you speak about the summary of findings. That would be on page 5 of your statement, starting off at the bottom.
Yes.
Can you just, in detail, highlight per finding and give a commentary as to how you came onto that finding and so forth?
I think the first major finding was that in the 5 years that we were investigating, the SABC suffered from capricious use of authority and power to terrorize staff and to deflect the corporation from its mandate and its editorial policies. The evidence we got, in fact, didn't show a pattern. I mean, it was just somebody who was in power who would just use it because I say so and because you should do it. It was a very frightening world, essentially, where people were bullied, they were thrown around, and they were pushed around. And it emerges in the transcripts that you can read. And I was delighted that, in fact, some of the people who have given evidence for the SABC have, in fact, confirmed this. I mean, here in this commission.
Yes.
As you deal with the findings that you made, it will help if, in regard to either each or in regard to some, depending on their importance as you see it, if you could elaborate a little bit in terms of the evidence that was placed before you, which led to that finding. You don't have to do that in regard to each one of them. If that's difficult, you can choose those that you regard as important, or there might be some that you regard as important but you don't remember the part of the evidence, and it doesn't have to be exhaustive, just some features that you would like to draw, to highlight.
For example, as far as the first finding is concerned, in the report, if you go to paragraph 70, right up to paragraph 73, staff members describe what it was like.
Yes.
Tandeka Kobulem Mbeki, for example, who gave evidence to this commission here,
Yes.
said it was an egregious abuse of power. And she described her state. You know, I'm on automatic, like I'm a robot. I'm just going through the motions. I get up at 4:30 every day, go to the gym, go to work, do everything that I'm supposed to. But there's no me anymore. There's just this automaton, this person, you can call it a robot, Tandi, but this is what I have become.
Yes.
Nyana Mulete describes it. When you are dealing with individuals like Jimmy Matthews, Hlawedi Mutwening, individuals who are all powerful, and individuals who at any turn would threaten to fire people, you do get demoralized. You just feel you come to work to basically earn your keep. Apart from just the bullying and that kind of thing, there was also a decline in the quality of the work we were doing. That's the type of evidence that we were picking up here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And your second finding, Mr. Thloloe?
We found an organization crippled by pain, anger, fear, by frustration, anxiety, and apathy, by inattentiveness, detachment, and helplessness. If you read through the whole report, you will see that it tries to give a texture of life at the SABC at the time. So it is not a detailed analysis of line-by-line analysis of the evidence.
Yes.
It just gives a texture as people were talking to us.
Yes, okay.
Now, one of the main, what shall we call it? The main thrusts of the inquiry, people were saying the enforcers must go. Now, the enforcers are people who were supposed to have been enforcing the policies of the SABC at the time. These are senior level management. And there was a clamor that these must go, and this must be one of our recommendations. And our feeling, after talking very deeply with Mr. Tawana, was that a witch hunt for enforcers wouldn't heal the corporation. The wounds are very deep. In fact, what it would do is it would just divide an already fractured institution. There was some evidence that there were suggestions that in fact the ANC had captured the SABC. But we found nobody who could come and say, I got instructions from Lutuli House. So we found no evidence of a direct line between the decisions at the ANC headquarters and decisions in the newsroom. But you have the specter of the ANC hovering very largely over the newsroom.
Let me take you back to the finding immediately before this one that you have just dealt with, the one about the enforcers. I guess that in regard to the call by some that the enforcers must go, and that your report must contain a recommendation to that effect. I suspect that what you may have had to deal with is to look at the issue of maybe avoiding any division in the corporation in terms of staff, but also at the same time you must have been alive to considerations of accountability, because to the extent that whatever it is that they may be alleged to have done, that is the enforcers, if it was a breach of the law, if it was misconduct, there may be a need for accountability. So my question is whether that indeed was one of the things you considered, and having considered issues of accountability and maybe the need for peace, in inverted quotation, commas, and stability in the SABC, you made a judgment call that you would rather say, let's rather recommend stability, and maybe you might or might not have thought that accountability and stability would sit together nicely. If you could just indicate whether those are matters that you considered and so on.
We did consider the question of the enforcers rather.
If you are
Mr.
able
Chair,
to, if you are comfortable to deal with it without referring to a particular page in the report, feel free to do so, as long as you know that whatever you say is consistent with what the report says. But if you feel that it's important to refer to the particular page, that's fine.
If I may just assist the witness, there's a topic about particularly an enforcer on page 44 of the report.
What is the page, paginated page number? Is it 44?
44.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it starts on page 43, where we deal with enforcers.
Yes.
And it is let's say, we looked quite deeply at it. We spoke to the people who were alleged to be enforcers.
Yes.
And of course, the reason was they were under duress because they would get fired. That's what most of them said.
Yes.
They were being threatened, etc.
Yes. So they mostly admitted having done certain things that may be viewed as wrong, but they said we were also in fear.
They were also victims of what was happening at the time. And each one of them had a story to tell about why they were doing what they were doing.
Yes.
For example, one person said, I ended up in a hospital, in a mental hospital, because of depression as a result of what was happening, the threats I was receiving from my bosses inside the SABC. And another one would say, I'm the only breadwinner in my house, and I was forced to do whatever I was being told to do. So they were passing the buck to their seniors.
Yes.
Now, in the end, we said we needed to draw a line. At what point of seniority do you say this is an enforcer? This one is a victim of the enforcers. Is everybody down the chain who actually carried out that instruction, would you say this person was an enforcer? So it's a very dubious area. And in the end, we said Parliament was there to oversee what was happening at the SABC. The Portfolio Committee on Communications was there. The board was there. The public who were paying for the SABC were there, and they didn't do anything until things got to this very bad situation. Now, to single out some people along the way would not be fair, because we are all guilty of having allowed the SABC to deteriorate to this condition.
I certainly wouldn't at this stage criticize the approach you took. Later on, one will hear everything and take it from there. But I can understand where you were coming from. But of course, the point you make about who was there, who was supposed to have carried out oversight is a very important point. The board was there. The Portfolio Committee in Parliament on Communications was there. What was it told? What did it know? What did it want to know? And when was it told what it wanted to know? Did it want to know the true position? And if it was told, what did it do? Those are very legitimate and important issues to look at, also for this commission. But of course, it may well be, I don't know, it may well be that you go to executive management, people who are in high positions, who may have been alleged to be enforcers. They say, no, I was forced, I was threatened, I feared. Maybe they say I feared Mr. Mtsoneng. I don't know who they will say they feared. And then you don't do anything. You might get to Mr. Mtsoneng. I don't know what he may or may not have said before you, and I can't remember whether he gave evidence. I seem to have read something suggesting he didn't. He might also say something else. He was also scared. Or one might get to people in Parliament, and maybe they might say, I don't know, they might say, well, my leaders in Parliament said I mustn't ask too many questions. The minister involved is our minister. I mean, Mr. Bloom testified here earlier this year and said when he was still in the ANC, when he was an ANC MP serving in the Correctional Services Portfolio Committee, when he asked certain questions to the minister trying to exercise his oversight obligation, the chief whip at the time, and I don't know who the chief whip was, called him and said something to the effect that you must not be too hard. This is our minister, or something like that. So we don't know whether there might be a lot of those types of situations even for MPs who might have been in certain portfolio committees. If they say that, are we going to say, okay, and as we go up, everybody pushes the responsibility up? Are we ever going to get to anybody except maybe the very top? I don't know. But I raise these things, as I say, not to say I wouldn't have reached the same conclusion that you have reached, but just to say these are some of the things that this commission must also look at, but as it looks at it, these are some of the questions that will arise to say, where must the line be drawn in order to, on the one hand, ensure that there is accountability, but maybe on the other hand, give recognition to certain challenges that people might have had.
The painful part with abuse is that the abused themselves turn against each other,
Yes.
and it becomes much more vicious at that level.
Yes.
So what we found as we were talking to people here was that the one person would point at another and say, that one is an enforcer, that one is an enforcer. And the fingers were pointed in all directions. That was the tragedy we found at the SABC.
Yes, no, I understand. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Thloloe. Paragraph 17, you had highlighted, that's on page 6 of the main statement, that there was no evidence of a direct line between the decisions at ANC headquarters, Lutuli House, and decisions in the newsroom, but the spectre of the ANC hovered over the newsroom. Can you just explain what you mean by the spectre of the ANC hovering over the newsroom?
There were several examples of this. For example, when the Minister of Communications did constituency work in KZN, ANC constituency work, journalists were forced to cover her every time she was out there. Now, the ANC might say we never asked her to do that, but the fact that she is an ANC member is, as I say, a spectre over what she was doing. The chairperson of the board goes to the SABC function where the SABC was donating a house to some family or another. And she went to that function wearing ANC regalia. Says a lot about what role the ANC was supposed to be playing.
Yes.
But there was, as I say, no direct line that says this is what the ANC has said. When the ANC came to give evidence, we've got the evidence of Mr. Zeze Kodo, where he says unqualified people at the SABC are responsible for the myth in quotes, myth that the ANC is running the SABC newsroom. These unqualified people are name droppers. They lie about who gave them instructions, and he considered that might be happening at the SABC. That's why over the years there's always been this story that the ANC is running the SABC newsroom. So that spectre just hangs over the SABC. Although there was no letter that we got that said the SABC wants you to do this, no memo, nothing like that.
As you deal with that, my mind goes back to the 80s. I guess one can go even before that, under apartheid. There was certainly among, I would imagine, very many people, black people and people who were opposed to the apartheid government, a very strong belief that the apartheid government, the Nationalist Party, were running news at the SABC at the time. So as you say that, my mind goes back to the question whether that is what may have happened even then, or whether what may have happened then is something much worse. Whether, and at that time, if there was an inquiry such as yours, one would have been able to find a direct link, or whether even then one might have not found a direct link and therefore not be able to say the National Party was running the newsroom at SABC, and but it was hovering over that's, I'm just sharing with you what's going on in my mind as you speak.
In fact, I remember those days. Anytime an SABC journalist tried to interview me, I would tell them, I'm not talking to you because you are a government spokesperson.
Yes.
Now, at that time, the control was very obvious. You had a Burger Bonder running the SABC as chief executive officer. You had telephone calls from the union buildings to the newsroom. And there is lots of evidence of that. In fact, some of the people who were involved have written about that. I think there is a book out recently talking about the television newsroom at the time. So there was direct
Yes.
evidence of that.
In regard to that, of course, you would know much more in that sector than I would know, but I was just trying to compare, because always one wants to make sure that whatever findings are made are findings that relate to facts. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Thloloe, in paragraph 17, you've mentioned there was no direct link from the Mutuvhi House. There have been 3 people who've made submissions in the transcripts about concerning Mutuvhi House. 2 of those people, however, it was just, they've heard and so forth, who were journalists in the newsroom and so forth. However, there is a particular individual who, Chair, I'm not particularly sure. There was a concern yesterday by Ms. Pillay about disclosing names and so forth, and we haven't notified these particular individuals. So I'm not quite sure if we should mention their names.
Well, maybe if it's something that must still be further investigated, maybe you don't need to deal with it. The witness can come back at any time in the future to deal with whatever might come out after there's been further investigation and they have been notified.
Yes, indeed so, Chair.
Yeah, I think that's safer.
Yes, Chair.
What I can say about that is that there were people who came to our commission and said they believe that it was an instruction from the Mutuvhi House, but they just heard it wasn't anything that they themselves were involved in.
They had no personal knowledge.
No personal knowledge whatsoever.
Okay.
Chair, if I may, just elaborating of what you said, Mr. Thloloe, people who didn't have direct knowledge, but how was it? I'm mindful of the fact that there was no investigative capacity. However, how did you then take in consideration the specific individual who stated that she had received a call, and she says this person was lying, saying that they were from the Mutuvhi House?
I don't remember that one.
So you might have to deal with it later when you have, if it's the one that requires 3 notices to be issued. You might
Indeed so, Chair.
Yeah, you might want to deal with it at a later stage when you might be able to direct the witness to the particular evidence, and then that person or the relevant persons would have been notified, and then we can deal with it.
Indeed so, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Thloloe, I'm just going to specifically deal with the submissions made by the various political parties. There were 3 parties that had made submissions, namely the ANC, the PAC, and the EFF. Is that correct?
And the DA also gave evidence.
The DA transcript, would that be contained in the evidence 8? The 8 that's not, because there's a particular volume of transcript that is still missing.
No, it should have been earlier than that.
We'll take a look. It might just be missing from the folders. In the meantime, I'm just going to be dealing with the submissions by these political parties. Just going to start off with the ANC, and then deal with the PAC, then the EFF, highlight the recommendations that they gave to, and if you could just comment on that. Chair, the first transcript begins at the second folder, B, on page 433.
You say second folder?
Second folder, apologies, sir.
I don't see
The second
any
file. The second file, that would be
Yeah, but-
CC 19B.
Yeah, don't say second file, say CC 19B. Then
Yes, Chair,
I
these
can find
folders,
it.
we've had a lot of them.
Okay, all right. What page?
Page 433.
Okay.
433, Ms. Block.
433.
Yes.
Yes, 433. And the page numbers she's referring to are the red ones at the top right-hand corner of each page.
Yes.
Are you there, Mr. Thloloe?
Yeah.
The ANC had made submissions upon invitation. That's correct.
As I said, they responded to the general
Invitation.
invitation. Yeah.
All right. And there were about 5 people from the ANC that attended
Yes.
that hearing.
Yeah, the one.
And in attendance was Mr. Zizi Godwa, identifying himself as a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC, a national member of the National Working Committee. Also with Mr. Godwa was Mr. Pulemabe, identifying himself as a member of the ANC National Executive Committee, a national spokesperson and head of communications. And then with the two of them, there were 3 other ANC employees identified as Amati Lerato and Rifilwe, who were in charge of the digital media liaison and photographic services of the ANC.
Correct.
Now, if we could just please turn to page 440.
You said if we go to what page?
440, Chair.
440. Thank you.
Are you there?
Yes, I am.
We're just starting off at the tail end, the recommendations that were given by the ANC. In particular, this was highlighted by Mr. Godwa. We're going to start at the bottom of the page, Chair, where it says, that would be line 24,
Yes.
where he states, I think that it is a fundamental basis and departure point. Not all parties have equal speaking time in Parliament. The African National Congress, in most
Shouldn't we start a little earlier than that? Because he talks about it being a fundamental basis, and I don't know what it is. Is it not stated earlier on what he's talking about? That he says is a fundamental basis and departure point. He says the
Okay.
second issue in relation
Yes,
to...
Chair. I'll start from there. That, Mr. Thloloe, that will be the line 14. On the same page on 440. Are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Thank you. It reads, the second issue in relation to that is in regard to the African National Congress. What should be covered in detail without repeating what is there? As a majority party, the concept of equity does not mean equal. I know it's a debate, but in terms of editorial decision, the fact that even in Parliament, in terms of speaking, in terms of the program of Parliament, it is based on the fact that our constitutional democracy recognizes the majority. And I think that it is a fundamental basis and departure point. Not all parties have equal speaking time in Parliament. The African National Congress, in most instances, has the largest or biggest time slot in terms of speaking, 20 minutes, 5 minutes, and so on. And it is deliberate. It recognizes the fact that we are not equal. Therefore, there are times where, as the largest political party, we think that regardless of respective levels of influence, how people have spoken in terms of outcomes electorally, and the SABC as a broadcaster tries to give all political parties equal time of issues of public interest. As the largest political party, politically speaking, we find it quite unfair to the African National Congress. When we turn over to page 442, I think just for context, Chair, apologies, that I should carry on from where I left off in the middle of, at line 16 on page 441, to able to connect the dots
That's
in the
fine.
next page.
That's fine.
Because the electorate in this country have spoken since 1994 and have not given the African National Congress anything national and provincial, and have not given anything less than 62%, the reflection that obviously cannot be undermined in the reflections of the editorial in terms of both news and particularly the public broadcaster. Therefore, we think that it disadvantages not only the African National Congress, but it also undermines the editorial view which would have been expressed by the majority of this country, because we cannot be equal under the pretext of equity. Equity does not mean equal. Then if we go to line 14 on the same page, we therefore make fundamental recommendations. We say fundamental because they are not just important, they are fundamental. The first recommendation we make, which I think is also very fundamental, is that the SABC should try very hard in case of the African National Congress to separate between party and the state. We say that selfishly to the ANC, but also will defend in areas we are not the majority party. In the case of the Western Cape, we will not argue the same, that the African National Congress must be given the biggest slice in terms of media above the Democratic Alliance. Because the Democratic Alliance is the biggest party in the Western Cape, so we will expect the same principle. We'll argue nationally, or where the African National Congress is dominant, we will argue the same principle as the Democratic Alliance, or we will go to elections now. That principle must apply. If we go to line 13 of that same page, it starts, the second recommendation we'll make is that I think the SABC, on a continuous basis, must strive to consider the objective tool of content analysis. In other words, the SABC in terms of how it provides disbalanced reporting. Sometimes you can't rely on individuals. There has to be a tool that guides those individuals editorially, those who report, those who write, from a newsroom point of view. And if we turn to page 446, that would be on line 8. It holds as a concluding point, the African National Congress does not want a public broadcaster that is a mouthpiece for the African National Congress. Mr. Thloloe, with all that was submitted by the ANC, can you give commentary to that effect?
It was pretty obvious to us that the ANC had a particular agenda when they came to make their submission. They were, in fact, asking for a bigger share than they were getting. And yet, since 1994, the concept of equitable representation on news broadcasts and on other news media has been accepted by the country. And their argument was that if we cover a minister, for example, saying something, we should also go to the ANC and get their comment on what the minister said, because the minister was speaking as a government person, and the ANC as a party also has a view on the same matter. As I say, we didn't take that into account in our recommendations. We believe that our responsibility was to find out if there was, in fact, pressure on the SABC, undue pressure on the SABC, and if this can be kept in one way or another.
Thank you.
Did the issue of separation between party and state or government arise in that context? You know, sometimes it will be said, even by the ANC, I think sometimes one gets the impression that when it suits the ANC, they will say what government has done, that's what the party has done, because it's the party that is the ruling party. But sometimes one gets the impression that they do want to distance themselves from government, to say, well, that's government, that's the government position, this is the party's position. Now, I say that without necessarily thinking of a particular issue on which that has happened, but I have the impression that sometimes that happens. It's like when a particular prominent member of the ANC has done something, maybe something wrong, it may be that it's a personal thing, and therefore it should not be associated with the party. But sometimes we would all know that if it's somebody particularly who is a senior leader, it could be seen as, look at what some of the senior leaders of the party are doing. Sometimes it's not so easy to make that distinction, but I think sometimes it is made, sometimes it is not made. So I wonder whether when you were looking at that, you had any challenges looking at that dividing line.
At this point, we just dismissed it as the ANC trying to
Get
gouge out some more mileage out of it.
Okay.
But as a newsman, if the government does something and the ANC takes a different position, it becomes news.
Yes, okay.
Otherwise,
Yes.
there's no point. It's trying to get two bites at the cherry.
Yes, okay. So your inclination would be, unless there's an indication that the ANC is taking a different position, there would be no need to give the ANC a chance to say something when a minister has already dealt with that from the point of view of government.
That's the line we took.
Yes,
Mr.
okay.
Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. The second political party was the EFF. Chair, that would be CC 19C.
C.
C, yes.
And what page?
912,
912.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, this is the start of the submissions by the EFF. In attendance was Mr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, identifying himself as the head of communications and national spokesperson of the EFF, and Ms. Mandisa Zvungile Masego, identifying herself as the chairperson of the EFF in Gauteng, also as a party leader for the EFF caucus in Gauteng Provincial Legislature. Just to quickly skip to the recommendations that were made by Mrs. Mashego, that can be found on page 941, Chair.
I'm sorry, I think I missed that. I'm at 914. Have we moved beyond that?
941.
Oh, did I get mixed up?
Yeah, 941,
not-
yes. Sorry, I mixed it, I don't know. It sounded like line. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I said I heard it sounded like
I'm at-
line.
The bottom line is that I'm at the wrong page.
Yeah, so the page where the recommendations start, Chair, are on page 941.
Okay,
Apologies for that.
okay, all right. Yes, we are ready.
Yes, so just highlighting the recommendations by the EFF, I'm going to start on number 1, where it's written number 1, the recommendations that are submitted by Ms. Mashego. Content has to be of interest in the interest of the public, whether it's political content or whatever. Even more importantly, political content, obviously. I wanted to raise the issue of separation of party and state. The proposal from the ANC on the proposal from the ANC borders on actually correcting that principle of party, in fact, is not a principle. I think in the Constitution, there must be a separation between party and state. In addition, on page 948, line 23, Mr. Ndlozi makes the submission starting.
What's that page now?
948, Chair.
948.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, yes.
That would be at the bottom of that page, starting at line 23. Mr. Ndlozi makes a submission that, starting from, the COO is at the center of programs and resources in the SABC. From time to time, when one is mistreated by a political editor or producer in a political show in the SABC, you pick up a phone and you complain, or you write to them directly and say to the COO that this has happened in the SABC, and so on and so forth. There are countless reasons why you should pick up a phone to interact with senior management, including members of the board. A panel member responds, "Don't you think it's an aspect that contributes towards interference in news?" Mr. Ndlozi replies, "No, the majority of the people believe that. If anyone gets interactive, let's take something else outside the public broadcaster, which is a news institution. the City Press or Power FM or 702. Surely the political editor or the senior editors of these institutions can be interacted with without it happening in the institution. Interacted with about what is happening in the institution. The point is that they ought to have known that they don't owe us anything. Panel member responds, okay. Mr. Ndlozi further on and goes that they must stick to the rules, they must be impartial, they must be fair, they must not be biased. Because the implication is that you must tell politicians not to call senior members of the SABC. No, we don't care. The question shouldn't even arise. You take a commitment, you sign a contract. When you take that job in the SABC, stick to that commitment, stick to the oath. And that would be the end of the recommendation and the finality of the submission by the EFF. Can you comment on that?
Okay. The essence of what the EFF was proposing was that at the end of every electoral cycle, when a new election date is announced, everybody goes to zero. So you don't have the equity based on the results of the previous year's elections. Again, for us, this was another way of trying to get mileage out of the SABC. They were saying the concept of equity is not fair to other political parties. Everybody must start from scratch. They are all equal, so they all need to get equal time from the SABC. But again, the SABC editorial policies are very clear about what should be happening. The ICASA regulations are very clear about how you cover elections. And the IEC also has regulations during elections. And one of the principles of all these organizations is that there is equity, and that equity is calculated on the basis of the previous year's elections, or the previous elections that there were. So again, we didn't take this argument very seriously. It was another game of politics that they were playing with us. They were not saying to us, there is political interference at the SABC, and this is the evidence we have for it.
Well, you may have had, you probably have had much more exposure than I have had in regard to those debates. So whatever I might say now is not necessarily as well informed by the debates for and against on some of these issues. But I kind of see where the EFF's suggestion, where the EFF comes from when they make that suggestion. I ask myself the question, in Parliament, the majority party is already allocated a lot of time. So to the extent that they might argue that they are entitled to have more time in order to tell the populace what they are doing about, because they have been given the power to govern. They have a lot of time to do that when they speak in Parliament. They have been given more time. Apart from that, they have maybe as government now, we go back to the question of separating between party and government. They have a lot of resources and time outside of Parliament to go to the people over the 5-year cycle of elections and tell the people what they have been doing. And they have much more resources than the opposition parties. Again, I just emphasize, I'm now talking where one is not separating between party and government, but they would be talking about the same achievements, whether it's government or the ruling party, over the 5-year period. So my question is, why, when they are all contesting elections, must the ruling party still get more time than the other parties? What is wrong with saying equity dictates that there must come a time when all the parties, if it comes to, for example, the public broadcaster, they must be given enough time, equal time, and they must make use of it, because it may well be that if you are going to keep on giving the opposition parties or smaller parties little time and giving the majority party, the ruling party, more time, that might be working against democracy, because you are suppressing or making it difficult for the smaller parties to rise and compete properly with the ruling party. And so as I sit here, and I don't know if I might change my mind, I'm just sharing with you what's going on in my mind now. I have a feeling that I don't see why there is a justification for talking particularly about the time when there are elections coming and they start campaigning. Maybe let's leave out during other times, just that time. That I don't see why they shouldn't be put on an equal footing in order to ensure that the citizens hear as much about each of them as possible without giving anyone an advantage, because the broadcaster and any objective bystander should be saying, we just want democracy to work and we want it to be strengthened. Whoever wins must win on the basis of equal chances. Now, there might be argument about equal chances, but it just seems that if you give the ruling party more time, even then, outside of parliament, you are unfairly disadvantaging the other parties.
Unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, democracy is extremely untidy.
Yes. No, I agree. And but I would like to hear what you might have to say about some of these thoughts that come to my mind without me having been exposed to many views on this subject. But you probably have had a lot of exposure in the media and through the inquiry to look at that, and then therefore you might be able to say, well, we considered all of those, or those arguments have been considered in literature, and there are different answers. One of the answers is this, one of the answers is that, and when you look at everything, the majority, most people think this is the way to go.
I think the reason in '94 South Africans settled for this system of equity is because, in 1994 elections, it was equal for everybody. And then after the elections, then you said the majority of South Africans think this way. So if at one stage you start diminishing what they have achieved as a party, you are now playing God over what they do or don't do. So the measure that you can use that is fair is, this is how you performed, therefore we will allocate you time equivalent to what you have achieved. Now, if a new party comes online and it is bringing fresh things, it's news, it's exciting, then they will get the support that they need from the media generally. But if it's another run-of-the-mill party that says we think we should get a bigger share, we are suppressing the views of the majority of the country. That's the problem with that solution.
Well, except that if we talk about the general election that we had in May this year, if you said, well, with effect from maybe March, the last 2 months before the election, we'll give equal time to all the political parties. The fact of the matter may well be that over the past 4 years, 10 months, you have given the majority party that more time than others. But you are seeking now to at least try to strike some balance. You think even then there would still be a legitimate complaint to say, notwithstanding the fact that for the past 4.5 years they had all this time, there would still be a legitimate concern to say, no, even that last month, that last 2 months, they must still have.
As I say, that's the solution we found in 1994. And as I say, the IEC in its regulations, every time there's an election, they insist on equity coverage.
Yes, it may well be that it is equitable, but I just have those questions in my mind, but I understand what you are saying. Thank you.
Thank you. The next party would be the PAC. That would be found on page 1071. Are you there, Mr. Thloloe?
Yep, got it.
Thank you.
I'm tempted to ask Mr. Thloloe whether there was no problem whether you were receiving submissions from the true PAC, from the genuine, legitimate
PAC. Which PAC?
Yeah. Anyway, thanks.
In attendance to this inquiry was Mr. Lotando Mbinda, who identified himself as the leader of the PAC and Member of Parliament. Also with Mr. Mabinda was Mr. Busing Tsotetsi, identified as a member of the National Executive Committee of the PAC, and Comrade Gansho, identified as a member of the National Executive Committee of the PAC as well. At a later stage, there was also a Mr. Buwe, whose position is not clearly identified in the transcript, but it seems like he was assumed that he was a member of the PAC as well. On page, if I could just direct the chair to page 1081.
Yes.
Just a short recommendation, what was encapsulated in these submissions. On line 20, it states that the last point that we are raising as a way forward is that once there's an election date that has been pronounced and a political party has been registered, all parties should be covered equally.
That's the same argument that the EFF had raised. And for the same reason, we didn't take the EFF's position. It quite fell outside our mandate. We were supposed to check if there is, in fact, political interference in the decision-making of the SABC. And
Or you were not there to make any recommendations to change existing policies and so on, and
no,
regulations?
We did make recommendations on that one.
Yes, okay. Okay.
If you go to the report, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'm almost there, Mr. Chairman. If you go to paragraph 220 in the A bundle,
And what page is
page
that?
59.
Page 59.
So the
Yes.
Commission accepts that any person, organization, or institution in the country has the right to influence coverage by the SABC, but the decision on what to cover and how to cover it rests with the editorial staff.
Yes.
And could I be excused, Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Do you need us to take an adjournment or no? Okay. Thank you.
There are too many documents in front of me.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Thloloe, can I assist? What perhaps are you looking for?
If you indicate to her what you are looking
That says the
for.
newsroom.
In the report?
If you look at it in the index
Yes.
page,
It's a section that deals with the newsroom.
yeah, it's headlined newsroom.
Or the
That
head.
starts on page, it's 24 of the report, but I will tell you the page number itself, the paginated number, that would be page 31.
Okay. Yes, the newsroom.
Now, if you go to 77, paragraph 77,
Yes.
the participants are guided by the corporation's editorial policies, which are intended to help the editorial staff negotiate difficult editorial issues and decisions so that distinctive and compelling and sometimes controversial programs can be made while maintaining the highest ethical and editorial standards. That already exists in the SABC's editorial
Yes.
policies.
Yes.
It also goes on to say, through this policy, the SABC is well positioned and unmatched in the market to meet the challenge of telling the South African story with compassion, determination, and resolution, while creating forums where South Africans from every walk of life can communicate ideas about their common future. So the values that the SABC should be upholding are already in place.
Yes. 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 Well, I shared with you what was going on in my mind in relation to this issue of equity, but probably it's something that the Commission has no business dealing with. Whether during elections, what parties are given in terms of airtime and so on and so on. But, and we have to recognize our boundaries. The Commission must recognize its boundaries and leave issues that must be dealt with by other institutions and other bodies for those institutions to deal with. But it's something that occurred in my mind as you were talking. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We ended off on paragraph 17 and then we went to the transcripts. So just to get back onto track onto your main statement. So we're going to go to the statement. That would be in file A on page 6, paragraph 18.
So that's going
Must
back to
confess, this
CC
is a huge
19A.
juggling.
Yeah, and they
Have you
are
got
all
the correct
big
file?
liver arch
Page,
files.
The
CC
page 6,
19A, page 6.
paragraph 18. We're continuing with your findings.
Page 6 of your statement.
page,
The red figure, the red number at the top, it's written
Page
6.
what?
6.
6, okay.
And paragraph 18.
Are you there?
Yep.
Can you just read out the following finding that was concluded in the report?
That's line 18.
Paragraph
18.
Paragraph 18.
The evidence shows that from the year 2012 up until the year 2017, SABC executives took instructions from people with no authority in the newsroom. For example, we quote the chairperson of the SABC board or the communications minister. The executives thus failed to execute their duties in terms of the editorial policies, which I just quoted now. The Commission further found that Nothando Maseko, Sibulelo Ditlhakanyane, and Nyana Molete were pivotal to the execution of instructions from Hlawili Mutuvhi, Jimmy Matthews, and Simon Debele. They succumbed because of threats of dismissal from their immediate superiors. That's the enforcers that we were talking about
Yes.
earlier.
Do you want him to read the rest of the paragraphs?
Just paragraph 19, Chair.
Okay.
Our last recommendation, which we think is very key to the independence of the SABC, is that the group chief executive should not be designated as the editor-in-chief. That system which we inherited from the BBC is inappropriate for our circumstances. Now, what happens is that the BBC Directors General are people who have come up the ranks from producing programs, etc., right up to the point where they now become Director General. So they are steeped in the production system.
They are journalists.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, what we have in South Africa is that we get a businessman to come and run the SABC who is not familiar with the world of journalism. So it's unfair to make him the
Editor-in-chief.
editor-in-chief.
Yes.
So we recommended that the group executive news should become the pinnacle of the upward referral
Yes.
system.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Thloloe, yesterday we heard the evidence of Ms. Pillay and Ms. Gubulembeki, both putting forth their dissatisfaction with the outcome of the report. We'll start with Ms. Pillay. Ms. Pillay highlighted the fact that people made submissions under the impression that their names would remain anonymous, and this was not proof after they have testified. Can you just comment on that?
At the end of our inquiry, Mr. Tawana and myself debated this issue. Do we now send each transcript to each of the participants to say, can we publish this or not? And we felt that that would, it would delay the process, and B, almost all the information we received is already in the public domain. It wasn't as if we're digging up new things. So we decided we are going ahead and publishing the names and the people. We didn't anticipate any form of threat to the people who gave evidence to us. Now, there were two commissions appointed at the same time. The one was the Sexual Harassment Commission, and the other was the editorial interference.
When you put it like that, it's
Okay, fine.
when you put it like that, it sounds inappropriate when you say it was a sexual harassment commission. It was a commission to
I'm terribly sorry.
look into
It was a
allegations of sexual
commission on
harassment.
Alleged sexual harassment.
Yes.
Now, the confidentiality there is understandable.
It's like
The-
its job was to carry out sexual harassment. So that's what I'm saying. It sounds inappropriate. Yeah.
Now, there the confidentiality was appropriate because of the nature of the subject they were dealing with. And we thought we could publish without any fear of risking anybody's life or anybody's income or whatever. So we decided, in the end, let us publish these names. The evidence they gave us is in the public domain. And I must confess that up to this point, not one person has written to us to say, you published my name against my wishes. Even Ms. Pillay yesterday didn't say she was opposed to her name being used, but she was quoting other people, unknown people who are saying they were publicized without their consent.
So, but from what you are saying, it seems that you are not disputing that the earlier arrangement was that their names would not be disclosed. You are simply saying that that may have been so or that was so initially, but when we were supposed to issue the report, here are circumstances that made us feel that there should be no problem if we disclose the names. Is that right?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Thloloe. Ms. Gabule Mbeki also had concerns about the report. She particularly highlighted the fact that there were minor inconsistencies, things that actually did not occur. She highlighted the fact, evidence that there was a particular meeting where it was stated in the report that Mr. Matthews and Ms. Ditlakanyani attended a meeting, but this was not the case. Can you comment on that?
Yes, Ms. Gabule has brought that to my attention, and I checked it and I found that she was right. Sebulelo was placed in a meeting where I was trying to say Sikonyela, who is a communications person for Brian Molefe at the time. So instead of typing Sikonyela, I typed Sebulelo. So it was an error on my part. The second one was Jimmy Matthews at a meeting with Ellen Chabalala. The sequence of events there is that Jimmy Matthews was not in that meeting, but the following day, he went to the newsroom and dictated an apology to Brian Molefe. So I think in the hurry to finish the report, I just elided from the meeting to the next day where he dictated a letter of apology to Brian Molefe. The two mistakes the two errors I committed, in fact there were 3 errors I committed, do not in any way affect the outcome of that finding. The point is, Jimmy Matthews succumbed to a demand from outside the newsroom for an apology, when in fact he shouldn't have. He should have stood by his staff and said, "We will not apologize." Whether he did it the day before or the day after doesn't materially affect the truth of the finding.
Mr. Thloloe, you just highlighted, just not to lose track, that you wanted to finish the report in time. You were in a hurry process to finish this report. Now, this report is dated the 25th of February 2019. Was this the date in which the report was submitted?
Yeah, that's the day we submitted the report.
Who did you submit the report to?
It was delivered to the group chief executive. But he in turn told us that this is in fact a board document and therefore needs to be submitted to the board. Management couldn't handle that report. And the report, I handed the report over to the board in July, on the 23rd of July, because the board wasn't correct for the months that we were working on this thing.
So just to clarify, you handed the report to the board in July 2019?
No, this year, July this year, and it was made public in August this year, on the 5th of August.
And just going back to your statement in paragraph 12 on page 5.
We have gone beyond 1 o'clock.
Yeah, oh, sorry, apologies, Chair. We have gone, I was not fair with the time, above 1 o'clock. However, upon the Chair's approval, I do not feel that this witness will be any longer. I think at most it would be 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, I was hoping less than 10 minutes. From what I see, you have covered.
Yes, Chair, I was just exaggerating, so just to say.
Okay, don't exaggerate. Just ask 2 or 3 questions that probably you still want to ask, and I'm sure will be done.
No, actually, this is the final question, so we should be done.
Okay. The next one is the final one, or you mean the last one you did is the final one, the final one?
No, this one is the final one.
Which one is this one? The last one?
The last one.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Mr. Thloloe, for having come forward to assist the commission. We appreciate it very much. Should the need arise, we will ask you to come back, but there might not be a need, but if the need arises, we will ask you to come back.
Mr. Chairman, I thought she was asking if we should accept this report.
Well, you had me ask her a few times whether the last question was the previous one or the one that she was still coming. She ultimately said it was the previous one, but I see that the way she's looking at me now is like she wants to change her mind. Do you want to ask one last question?
Yes, Chair.
Okay,
I blame
all right.
sleep deprivation. Apologies.
Okay, all right.
In paragraph 12, Ms. Thloloe, you highlight that the report and the findings should be adopted by the Commission. Being mindful of the fact that there's a transcript missing, would you rather make a submission that this report be provisionally adopted by the Commission? Can you elaborate on this paragraph?
The typographical errors I've already mentioned. The transcript is still outstanding, but as soon as I have it available, I can submit it. I don't know what else happens after I submit the transcript. But I would ask that this report be provisionally accepted.
No, I think what will happen is I probably will find a lot of help from the report. We'll look at it. Maybe adopting might be a formal term that one can look at, but certainly one assumes that there'll be a lot of help that one can gain from this report, and that in the end, the assistance that the Commission will have derived from it would be acknowledged in one way or another. Yes, okay, thank you. But I think it will be important that whatever is remaining in terms of the transcript that is not before the Commission yet should be made available as soon as possible. And to the extent that there may be certain errors to which you have spoken, it would be important that there is a clear document that makes it clear where those errors are. And so that when one goes through it, one bears in mind those errors that have been admitted. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. We'll facilitate that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate your coming to assist the Commission. Thank you very much. You are excused.
Thank you, Chair.
Ms. Norman,
thank
that
you.
is the end for today.
For today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
On Monday, we start at 10.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Who do we have on Monday again?
We have,
Is it Dr. Ngubane?
it's Dr. Ngubane. It's Dr. Ngubane, it's Mr. Van Vuren, and Mr. Leonard Dikgato, sorry,
Oh,
we
okay.
usually write them down.
Yes,
Yes,
okay,
thank you.
all right. No,
But we
that's
will
fine.
we'll send it to the registrar, the written names down.
Yes.
Yes, and we'll make sure that the files are aligned in that fashion.
Okay,
on
no,
Monday.
that's fine.
Thank you.
We are going to adjourn at this stage for the day, and on Monday we'll start at 10 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr.
We adjourn.
All rise.